Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're covering a dramatic and unexpected development that's sending shockwaves through Moscow and the region. Belarus has reportedly shut down Russia's critical land bridge, halting major train routes and supply lines that connect Russia to its western and southern fronts. The sudden shutdown has left freight trains stranded, logistics disrupted, and military transport paralyzed. It's being described as a massive strategic setback, one that could change the course of ongoing military operations and severely test relations between Moscow and Minsk. According to multiple intelligence and railway monitoring sources, the Belarusian government ordered the suspension of key rail corridors that serve as a land bridge between Russia and its forward positions in Europe. These routes are vital. They carry not only goods and fuel, but also military equipment, including ammunition, vehicles, and support materials destined for Russian units near Ukraine and the Baltics. The unexpected order reportedly came just hours after Belarusian military command centers were placed on high alert following reports of internal unrest and sabotage attempts targeting critical infrastructure. Trains loaded with Russian cargo and supplies are said to be immobilized across Belarus, stranded at key junctions with no clearance to proceed. Some videos circulating on local social media platforms show long convoys of freight trains backed up for kilometers, with soldiers patrolling the areas to prevent looting or unauthorized movement. Russian logistics officers have reportedly been caught off guard, as the shutdown coincides with intensified pressure on Russia's supply lines amid worsening battlefield conditions. For Moscow, this is nothing short of a logistical nightmare. For years, Belarus has been Russia's most reliable transport ally, a land corridor that connects Russian territory to the Western Front and gives Moscow a direct route to its military assets in Kaliningrad and beyond. This network of railways, often referred to as Russia's land bridge, has been essential for maintaining the flow of weapons, fuel, and troops to various fronts. By halting or disrupting these routes, Belarus has effectively cut one of the Kremlin's most crucial arteries. What remains unclear is whether this move was a deliberate political act or a byproduct of chaos unfolding within Belarus itself. Some sources close to opposition groups claim that elements within the Belarusian military and railway workers' union coordinated the shutdown as a form of resistance against Russian dominance. If true, this could indicate growing defiance inside Belarus's state apparatus, a silent revolt against both Lukashenko's government and its heavy reliance on Moscow. At the same time, official statements from Minsk have been vague and contradictory. The Belarusian Transport Ministry has cited technical issues and security threats as the reason for suspending several rail lines, while state television insists the situation is under control. However, independent analysts say there's strong evidence suggesting that this is not a routine technical problem, but rather a strategic blockade, either an intentional act of defiance or a desperate measure taken by Lukashenko to regain leverage over Russia amid growing tensions. This incident also follows weeks of reports suggesting strained relations between Alexander Lukashenko and Vladimir Putin. Despite their alliance, Belarus has been under pressure from Moscow to deepen military integration and allow more Russian control over its defense infrastructure. Lukashenko, facing internal instability and rising discontent, appears to be walking a tightrope, balancing between pleasing the Kremlin and avoiding total subservience. By halting Russian supply lines, he may be sending a warning signal to Putin. Belarus is not a puppet state to be used at will. On the other hand, some Western intelligence assessments suggest that Belarus might be losing control of parts of its own infrastructure. Reports of cyber attacks targeting railway command systems, unexplained communication outages, and sabotage by pro-democracy activists have surfaced in recent days. These acts could have disrupted rail operations enough to force a shutdown, regardless of political intent. If that's the case, then the situation could be far more chaotic than anyone expected. An internal breakdown of logistics control that further destabilizes Lukashenko's already fragile government. Meanwhile, Moscow's response has been one of visible frustration. Russian state media initially downplayed the incident, calling it temporary. But as the hours passed and freight continued to pile up, tone shifted. Commentators began warning that technical sabotage would not go unpunished, and some pro-Kremlin figures have openly suggested that Russian forces may need to secure the rail corridors inside Belarus themselves. That, of course, raises the stakes dramatically. Any Russian move to intervene militarily on Belarusian soil could spark panic within the country and deepen the rift between the two allies. For Europe and NATO, this sudden shutdown represents a moment of both opportunity and caution. The Belarusian land bridge has long been viewed as a strategic channel that gives Russia a logistical edge in its confrontation with the West. If that bridge is compromised or severed, it limits Moscow's ability to move heavy military assets quickly. However, Western analysts also warn that a desperate Russia might respond unpredictably, either by pressuring Lukashenko to restore control or by launching its own operations to bypass Belarus altogether, potentially through occupied territories or cyber warfare tactics. In neighboring countries like Poland and Lithuania, rail and border security have been tightened. There's growing concern that the disruption could spill over into broader regional instability. Polish intelligence sources have already reported unusual troop movements along the Belarusian border and increased Russian aerial reconnaissance activity. European governments are quietly monitoring the flow of refugees and migrant workers who may get caught up in the chaos as transport systems grind to a halt. Inside Belarus, citizens are feeling the ripple effects. Train services for civilians have slowed drastically, fuel deliveries are delayed, and shelves in some regional towns are starting to empty. The shutdown of Russia's land bridge is not only a geopolitical shock, but also an economic one for Belarus, whose trade heavily depends on rail freight. Local media reports that the government has imposed restrictions on public gatherings and tightened information control to prevent panic. The long-term implications of this crisis could be profound. If Belarus has intentionally severed or disrupted Russia's supply chain, it signals a historic turning point, perhaps the first open act of defiance by Minsk in decades. It would represent a subtle but powerful message that Lukashenko's regime, once Moscow's closest ally, may now be seeking room to maneuver independently. On the other hand, if this chaos is the result of rebellion or sabotage beyond Lukashenko's control, it could mean his grip on power is slipping faster than anyone thought. For Russia, restoring the land bridge is now a matter of urgency. Each day of delay adds strain to its supply chains and weakens its operational tempo. Military analysts note that some Russian field units near Ukraine and Kaliningrad rely heavily on Belarusian rail logistics. A sustained shutdown could disrupt ammunition deliveries, fuel lines, and troop rotations. A nightmare scenario for the Kremlin's planners. In the corridors of power across Europe and Washington, diplomats are recalibrating their expectations. A weakened link between Russia and Belarus could accelerate Moscow's isolation, but it could also provoke dangerous new escalations. Observers recall that control over transport corridors has often triggered major geopolitical shifts, and this could be one of those moments when infrastructure becomes the battlefield. As of now, negotiations between Belarusian and Russian railway authorities are reportedly ongoing, but progress remains uncertain. Satellite imagery confirms long freight lines backed up near key junctions, while several regions have declared local emergencies to manage the fallout. Whether this crisis is resolved diplomatically or through force will determine not only the fate of Belarus-Russia relations, but also the broader stability of Eastern Europe. The coming days will be crucial. Will Lukashenko bow to Kremlin pressure and reopen the land bridge, or will he stand his ground and risk retaliation from Moscow? Will Belarus's internal dissent grow stronger, potentially spiraling into full-scale rebellion? One thing is certain. The shutdown of Russia's land bridge through Belarus marks one of the most significant disruptions in the region's modern history. That's all for today's report. This story is still developing, and the situation remains volatile. Stay tuned here for more verified updates, analysis, and deep coverage of this ongoing crisis between Belarus and Russia. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next major update.